Hey man, you was in there standing up while you were eating. When they bump down on you, they ask you, is you under the five or is you a rapper? You said a rapper. I got facts about these, man. Hey man, I'm on your ass, man. You know what I'm talking about, man? Cause why, hold on, man. You ain't stand up? You ain't sit down? When it was time to stand on business? So you let a nigga basically get you, man, made you stand up and eat your food. I thought you supposed to sit down and eat. Man, he got the internet food, man. That nigga a hoe in jail, man. That nigga a buster, nigga. And I can get the penitentiary on the phone, nigga. For real.
I used to think I understood Memphis rap, but I was way off the mark. A lot of people see these rappers like untouchable legends, but behind prison walls, it's a whole different story where nobody can really protect you. Think about Pooh Shiesty in this situation. The same artist who had the whole country yelling "back in blood" is now allegedly navigating federal jail time under intense pressure. Reports claim things get even more intense. Stories say he was being pushed into tough situations, allegedly treated harsh during mealtimes like a punishment setting, and rumors say when inmates confronted him asking, "You one of us or just a rapper?" he allegedly broke under pressure. But here's the wild twist that changes everything. A 32-year prison veteran reportedly went live to defend Pooh Shiesty's name, putting his entire reputation on the line. What he said could flip the whole narrative upside down and reveal what really happened behind those walls, no cap. By the end of this, you'll see clearly who was telling the truth, who wasn't, and why some in Memphis would rather see their own star fall than rise.
Rapper Pooh Shiesty is facing prison time after pleading guilty to a gun charge in Miami federal court. The case against Lontrell Williams Jr. stems from 3 shootings during the past 2 years, 2 of them happening right here in South Florida.
This story runs deeper than most expect, packed with layers like an onion, and I'm about to peel it all back. Pooh Shiesty was sitting at the top of the rap game when everything started shifting around him. Millions of streams, platinum plaques, and the whole city of Memphis behind him. But when federal charges landed in 2021, everything flipped overnight. The streets started watching close, waiting to see if that same energy from his music would survive behind bars. But what really went down was way different. While Pooh Shiesty was locked up, rumors started leaking out of federal prison, painting a picture that fans never expected. Different stories, different angles, and a whole lot of tension building behind those walls. We talking serious allegations that could wreck a street rapper's reputation forever. To understand how deep this goes, you gotta rewind to when Pooh Shiesty first stepped through them prison gates. But before that, the internet was already going crazy with people reacting every second, waiting for updates. Let's go back to 2021 and break it down. Pooh Shiesty was on fire with "Back in Blood" alongside Lil Durk, taking over the internet and being called the next big king out of Memphis rap. But that federal shooting case in Miami caught up with him Fatma. When Pooh Shiesty got sentenced to federal time, the whole hip-hop world was locked in watching every move he made. He took a plea deal in January 2022, pleading guilty to conspiracy charges tied to firearms and trafficking allegations. The government was originally pushing for 10 years, but his legal team fought back hard and got it down to 63 months. That was a major shift in the case outcome. This wasn't county jail energy at all. This was big federal prison time, where your rap sheet doesn't mean much if you can't stand on business. Federal. Prison runs on its own rules, its own politics, and its own pressure system. For a young rapper coming out of Memphis, this was the ultimate test of survival and reputation. Inside those walls, different groups move different, and every decision matters more than ever. You've got different groups inside federal prison, gang affiliations, geographic cliques, and then the unaffiliated who try to move carefully and stay out the way.
Never mind, it's been confirmed by the Department of Justice. Pooh Shiesty, Big 30, and his dad are sitting in jail because they robbed Gucci Mane. Like, tricked yourself out your position to go be with boys again. I will never understand it, bro. Side note, I just left the gym to report this. Here's the official story. Basically, Pooh Shiesty, Big 30, and his dad, with 8 other men, pushed up to the studio where Gucci Mane was. All the men whipped out firearms and robbed Gucci Mane and his people that was in the studio. Not only that, Pooh Shiesty forced Gucci Mane and whoever else was there to sign a contract releasing him from the label. And now all the men in Pooh Shiesty have been caught, which is weird because if you think about it, how did they know the names of all the other dudes? And now people are accusing Gucci Mane of telling, while others are saying that no, the studio just gave the information to the cops. Regardless, bruh, you was just sitting in jail with boys every single day. You eat, sleep with boys. You finally come back to shotties, and the first thing you do is put yourself at risk to be with boys again. I won't never understand that. You're a multi-millionaire, bro. You don't like to be with boys again? Really? Anyways, what do you guys think about the situation? I'm about to go back to hitting my reps.
When a high-profile rapper like Pooh Shiesty walks in, everybody starts paying attention immediately, watching closely to see exactly where he fits in that dangerous structure. But this is where the story takes a sharp turn. Rumors started spreading fast that Pooh Shiesty wasn't moving the same way his music made people believe he would. We're talking about allegations that, if true, would be every rapper's worst nightmare behind bars. According to various online sources and circulating claims, Pooh Shiesty was dealing with serious pressure inside federal custody. Some individuals who claimed to be connected to Memphis prison circles even took to social media saying they had inside information about how things were allegedly playing out. In federal prison, one Memphis-linked voice reportedly came forward with explosive accusations. This individual claimed that Pooh Shiesty was being extorted and allegedly forced into humiliating situations during mealtimes, including being made to stand while eating, which they described in a highly disrespectful way. And that still wasn't even the most controversial part of the story. According to the same claims, when certain inmates confronted him and asked a direct question, "Are you one of the five or are you a rapper?" Meaning, are you truly living that life or just performing it? Pooh Shiesty allegedly responded by identifying as a rapper. That moment, according to these circulating reports, sent shockwaves through the environment. For many in street culture, that kind of answer is interpreted in different ways, and the Memphis streets allegedly started buzzing immediately after. Here's a rapper known for lyrics about violence, loyalty, and street politics now reportedly facing a situation where people claimed his real-life energy didn't match his music persona at all. The source didn't stop there either. He claimed Pooh Shiesty was being moved around inside, allegedly forced to follow orders from more established inmates, almost like he had no real control over his own movement. The allegations painted a picture where he was being pushed into a low position in the prison hierarchy, constantly watched and controlled in ways that made the situation sound intense and uncomfortable. But the story takes another sharp turn here. Another claim says Pooh Shiesty was allegedly having to freestyle and perform for other inmates just to get through certain moments and stay in good standing. Picture this wild scenario, the same artist pulling in millions of streams on, the outside now allegedly rapping just to protect his own safety behind bars. That contrast alone is enough to shake anybody's perspective. If these claims are true, it paints a disturbing image of how quickly status can shift once those prison doors close. As time went on, these stories didn't just disappear either. They kept circulating across Memphis blogs, online forums, and street discussions that kept feeding the narrative. His reputation, according to these claims, was taking hits while he was locked inside with limited ability to respond or defend himself properly.
Thank you for coming. This week, 9 individuals, including well-known musical artists, kidnapped and robbed at gunpoint numerous victims at a music studio in Dallas, Texas. 8 of the 9 were arrested yesterday in Dallas, Memphis, and Nashville. These individuals who are charged and arrested include Lontrell Williams Jr., also known as Pooh Shiesty, Lontrell Williams Sr., Rodney Wright Jr., also known as Big 30, and were inside the recording studio. Williams Jr. and 8 co-conspirators, several of whom traveled from Memphis, Tennessee, executed a coordinated armed takeover. As alleged, Williams Jr. produced an AK-style pistol and forced one of the victims to sign a release from the recording contract at gunpoint.
According to the same Memphis-linked inmate source making these accusations, Pooh Shiesty was allegedly labeled in harsh terms by others inside the system. For a rapper whose entire brand was built on toughness, loyalty, and street credibility, those kinds of labels, whether true or exaggerated, would be considered extremely damaging in that environment. These types of claims, if believed, can shift how people view you permanently, especially in a space where reputation is everything and respect is constantly being tested. Now here's something that often gets overlooked in all this noise: the money situation. Pooh Shiesty went into federal prison as a platinum-selling artist with serious financial backing behind him. And in the federal system, money changes everything in a major way. While many inmates are surviving on basic provisions, Others are operating in a completely different reality depending on what they have access to financially. A wealthy inmate can live in a totally different world behind the same walls. We're talking about a federal commissary account that can stay funded consistently through outside support. In federal prison, people on the outside, labels, management teams, family, ORFAs can send money directly onto an inmate's books. With Pooh Shiesty's level of fame and industry backing, his account reportedly stayed active, meaning access to better food, items, supplies, and overall comfort compared to the average inmate experience. We're talking ramen noodles stacked high like 6 layers deep. Real tuna packs, honey buns, chips, protein bars. Commissary inside federal prison turns into a whole underground kitchen system that most people outside would never even imagine. Inmates be mixing and matching items just to build full meals out of whatever they can get their hands on. It's survival, but it's also strategy. And here's where things get even more interesting. Pooh Shiesty himself has reportedly spoken in interviews after getting out, confirming that he was eating steaks behind bars. Not a metaphor, not slang. Actual meat served and prepared in ways most people don't expect from prison life. When you understand how federal commissary access and kitchen dynamics work, it starts to make a lot more sense. Because when you've got money in that system, everything shifts fast. You can pay other inmates to cook, trade for better portions, and basically build your own small restaurant setup inside those walls. The man wasn't starving, not even close. That financial backing completely changes the survival game. But it goes way deeper than just food. In federal prison, money can literally buy comfort and control in small but important ways. Hygiene products, upgraded basics, better shoes within the rules, even small personal items that make daily life easier. When you're sitting on platinum-level earnings while others have almost nothing, that difference becomes obvious fast.
So, Gucci walk in the damn studio, bro, with his people, to Draco's. The footage is going to show Pooh Shiesty had one on him, Big 30 had one on him. Only person who really gonna escape from this is the Pops. The Pops did not want none of this to go on. Nigga like this, bro. Gucci look at the dad like, the Pops just head down. You can't tell your son nothing right now. Your son the number one right now. You gonna sign this? Sign the damn papers. And we need that. Wedding ring. Watch. Come up out that. The person who closed the door is Big 30. He got his Draco. That's why they put the warrant out for him. This is all on camera, so nothing I'm telling y'all ain't shit that the feds don't know. A lot of y'all gonna be like, oh, bro, this fair work. It really ain't. I tried to say the nigga by saying he wasn't there. Saying he left and then these cats did whatever they did. I tried. I tried to get the jury. By the time I get to Dallas, these niggas done already left.
And here's the part people don't always talk about. Commissary wealth can also put a target on your back. When word spreads that a certain inmate has consistent money flowing in, it can attract attention, sometimes the wrong kind. That's where tension starts building in subtle but dangerous ways. So the idea of whether Pooh Shiesty got pressured over his commissary situation is actually more complex than it first sounds. In a place like federal prison, having money is both protection and risk at the same time. It can keep you comfortable, but it can also make you stand out in ways you might not want. Now let's get into something that really got the streets talking: protective custody. This is where the conversation gets sensitive because in prison culture, PC carries a heavy stigma that can follow someone long after they leave. Protective custody basically means an inmate is separated from the general population, usually because they requested safety or because prison administration decided they couldn't safely stay in the main yard. On paper, it sounds like basic protection, but inside prison culture, it can be viewed in a completely different light, and that label alone can change how people see you. At some point during his sentence, word started circulating that Pooh Shiesty may have been placed in or around protective custody status. Now, whether that was his personal choice or something decided by officials is a whole different layer to the story. When a high-profile celebrity enters federal prison, the Bureau of Prisons doesn't just toss them into general population and hope everything works out. They run full security assessments. They look at who the person is, what risks might exist, and whether their fame puts them in danger from other inmates who already recognize them from the outside world. For someone like Pooh Shiesty, whose face and music were already widely known, that creates a unique situation. The administration has real reasons to be cautious here. From their perspective, if a famous rapper were to get harmed inside their facility, it could instantly turn into a national headline and a serious liability issue. So in some cases, protective custody isn't even something the inmate directly chooses. It can be a decision made entirely by the system for safety reasons. But once that happens, the stigma can still follow because prison culture often interprets separation from the general population in a very specific and judgment-heavy way. But the streets don't care about bureaucratic explanations. In that world, PC gets boiled down to one harsh interpretation. You couldn't survive with the general population. That narrative started attaching itself to Pooh Shiesty's name while he was still locked up and completely unable to respond or clear anything up. Memphis blogs picked it up fast. Gossip pages ran with it even faster. And suddenly the PC angle got tangled into all the other allegations floating around his situation. The story started spreading in layers, each version sounding a little more intense than the last, adding more confusion to an already messy narrative. Now here's where things get even more complicated. Multiple people claiming to have been in the same facility during that same time frame started speaking out, but they didn't agree at all. Some said Pooh Shiesty was in protective custody the entire time. Others claimed they personally saw him in general population, moving normally like any other inmate. That kind of contradiction immediately raises questions because it suggests not every voice in the conversation was actually accurate, or even present.
Man, so they said Pooh Shiesty's dad has been arrested after the FBI raid yesterday. I don't know if it's true, but I'm also seeing reports of Pooh Shiesty being arrested. It say this is allegedly linked to the rumors of Pooh Shiesty and Big 30 robbing Gucci Mane. If I ain't tripping, I remember this story being talked about months ago. When I first heard about it, I thought it was a fake-ass story. It sound made up. They accused Pooh Shiesty of forcing Gucci Mane to let him out his record deal. I don't even understand how you could do that. I don't even think that would work to get out of a deal. I'm also seeing people in the comments say Gucci snitched. How do y'all accuse somebody of snitching without proof? It be people in the comments that live in good ass neighborhoods saying somebody snitched. Y'all gotta understand, a lot of the industry fuck with Gucci. If that actually happened, a lot of people would not rock with Pooh Shiesty. They would basically try to blackball dude. A lot of labels probably wouldn't even want to mess with him. I ain't saying he ain't in jail, but it's probably for something else. It's a wild ass story though.
And then the story takes a major shift. When the allegations started gaining serious traction online, Pooh Shiesty finally got indirect support from someone with heavy credibility. Not him directly, but through a respected OG who had been in the system for over 32 years. This wasn't just any random voice. This was someone with decades of experience, deep respect, and a reputation built inside federal prison walls. That OG went on live and essentially put his own name on the line to defend Pooh Shiesty. According to him, all the talk about extortion and pressure was straight cap. He claimed Pooh Shiesty kept to himself, stayed in his lane, handled his business quietly, and never tried to prove anything to anyone inside the system. The OG made it crystal clear that Pooh Shiesty was solid and he wasn't seeing any of the strange behavior people were spreading online. That statement alone started shifting the conversation, because it directly challenged a lot of the rumors that had been circulating for months. But the real clarity comes when you break down what Pooh Shiesty himself said in interviews after getting released. Pooh Shiesty described his prison experience in a way that surprised a lot of people. He talked about cooking regularly behind bars, not just basic prison meals or commissary noodles, but full-on upgraded food situations. He even mentioned eating steaks while inside. Not exaggerations or slang, but actual steaks prepared through connections and resources within the system. When interviewers asked him to clarify, he made it clear he wasn't talking about luxury restaurant meals, but he was still eating better than the average inmate. And that detail alone says a lot. In that environment, access to better food usually means someone has either respect, money, or both working in their favor. When you factor in the money he had coming in, that lifestyle starts to make a lot more sense. Pooh Shiesty also talked about how he spent his time focusing heavily on writing music while incarcerated. While others were caught up in prison politics and day-to-day tension, he was stacking verses and planning his comeback. That mindset showed exactly where his focus was during that time. He even called into $1 million worth of game while still locked up, sharing his experience publicly. That kind of access from inside federal prison isn't something just anyone can pull off. It requires resources, connections, and a certain level of freedom within the system that most inmates simply don't have. The OG who defended him explained it in simple terms. In federal prison, if you're really moving the wrong way, everybody around you is going to know it immediately. The fact that a respected lifer was willing to put his name behind Pooh Shiesty says a lot about how that situation was being viewed from inside prison circles. But even with that kind of credibility stepping in, the Memphis streets weren't finished talking. The same individual who originally made the allegations came back even stronger, doubling down on his claims about Pooh Shiesty being pressed and challenged inside the system.
So if y'all remember, about a month ago, there was a story circulating around the internet that Pooh Shiesty and Big 30 had robbed Gucci Mane. Everyone said it was just rumors, but today, this breaking news has just came out that it was true. Rapper Gucci Mane robbed and kidnapped by Pooh Shiesty and 3 other suspects. Channel 2 in Atlanta just reported that on January 10th, Gucci Mane, real name Radrick Davis, traveled with 2 others to a business meeting at the studio arranged by Pooh Shiesty, real name Lontrell Williams Jr. in Dallas, described as a coordinated takeover. Williams is accused of pulling out an AK-style pistol and forced one of the victims to sign a release of recording contract at gunpoint, according to the U.S. attorney. Davis and others were then robbed of cash, Rolex watches, and other jewelry. Pooh Shiesty is signed to Gucci Mane's label. So Pooh Shiesty is over with. If I don't know how dumb or what he was thinking when he was doing this, but he ain't never coming home. He already got those previous charges. Now you got federal kidnapping and robbery charges. We done seen the last of Big 30 and Pooh Shiesty.
He insisted he had real experience, saying he had money before rap, traveled everywhere, and had done multiple bids, claiming he could tell real from fake just by watching how people move. Now let's talk about something that doesn't get nearly enough attention: what it actually means to be a celebrity inside federal prison on a daily basis. Because the reality is completely different from what most people imagine, and the dynamics are way more complicated than outsiders realize. When you're famous and you enter federal prison, your reputation walks in before you do. Guards already know your name, inmates already recognize your face, and administration already has your file pulled up. That kind of visibility creates an environment where everybody wants something from you in some form. Some inmates try to get close because they think association with fame benefits them. Others may see you as a target to test, trying to challenge your image or reputation. Some genuinely connect with you because they know your music or grew up listening to it. And then there are those who see opportunity. People who assume fame equals money and outside support, which can lead to pressure or extortion attempts. Now imagine dealing with all of that every single day while also trying to stay out of trouble, avoid new charges, and keep your mental state intact. It's a constant balancing act where every interaction carries weight and every decision can shift how you're perceived inside that environment. That's the situation Pooh Shiesty walked into, and it's what people often call the celebrity tax in federal prison. It's very real, and it hits different once you're inside. Everybody expects something from you in one way or another, and you have to quickly figure out who actually respects you and who might be trying to run a game on you. Then there's the visitation side of things. Regular inmates might only see family once a month if they're lucky, but a famous rapper? That situation gets way more complicated. Managers, lawyers, label representatives, and family members all trying to come through creates constant movement around your name. That level of attention doesn't go unnoticed inside the facility either. When someone in an executive role is calling your name for legal visits multiple times a week while other inmates are just sitting on long sentences with very little interaction, it creates tension in the background. Some people see that and respect the status and structure behind it. Others see it and start feeling resentment or curiosity about what that person really has access to. Then you've got the phone system. In federal prison, phone calls are limited and expensive, but money changes that experience completely. If you've got funds on your books, you can buy phone time whenever it's available, almost like purchasing access to the outside world. Pooh Shiesty was allegedly able to stay in contact with his team, staying plugged into music industry updates while locked up.
And what I realize is like these cliques of rappers, because right now it's weird in Atlanta, it's getting weird for everybody else. Why? That's all their homies. Like that's the cool crew. So I thought that when the whole F the streets thing was, kind of transpiring and going around social media and hip hop, you know who I felt should be the last person that jumped in on that? Pooh Shiesty. You just came out of jail and you're saying that you're back on the streets and you're bringing back the streets down there.
That level of connectivity is a major advantage in that environment, and it's something most inmates simply don't have access to. It keeps you connected to your career, your people, and everything happening outside those walls. So now there are two very different narratives floating around at the same time. On one side, some Memphis voices claim he was being disrespected and pressured inside. On the other side of this story, you've got a 32-year federal prison veteran stepping in and saying, "Pooh Shiesty was solid," and that all those circulating stories were completely false. That contrast alone makes the situation even more intense because both narratives are coming from very confident voices. Now here's what we actually know for a fact. Pooh Shiesty completed his time without any major, publicly documented incidents making headlines or court records. In a federal system, especially with high-profile inmates, serious events don't usually stay hidden. There's documentation, reporting structures, and paperwork that tends to follow anything major that happens inside. That's why the claims about him being forced to freestyle for protection don't fully align with the verified parts of his prison experience. Pooh Shiesty himself has consistently stated in interviews that he was focused on writing music and staying out of unnecessary conflict. If he were truly being forced into situations like extortion-based performances, that would likely reflect a very different version of events than what he personally described. But here's where things get deeper: the psychology behind these allegations. When a young, successful rapper gets locked up, there's often a wave of people trying to reshape or tear down their public image. In many environments, if someone can't reach that level of success themselves, they may try to challenge or diminish those who did. The Memphis inmate making these claims repeatedly emphasized his own background, being rich before rap, traveling widely, and serving multiple bids. That repetition comes across like someone trying to establish authority and credibility before attacking another person's reputation. On the flip side, the prison OG defending Pooh Shiesty had no clear incentive to fabricate anything. A person serving a life sentence typically isn't chasing attention, rap politics, or online validation. That lack of personal gain is part of why his defense carried so much weight in the discussion. When someone like that, OG, speaks up, it usually carries weight because it suggests they saw something firsthand that didn't match the online narratives. The fact that Pooh Shiesty came home and almost immediately started gaining momentum again with new music also adds another layer to the conversation. If someone had truly been mentally broken down or completely shaken by their prison experience, people question whether they could really return that fast and step back into the spotlight with confidence. Right after release, he was already on live streams, reconnecting with fans and moving with the same energy that made him popular before prison. That kind of transition is something people pay close attention to because it can reveal a lot about what someone actually went through behind those walls. Here's another key detail. Pooh Shiesty didn't come home doing long, dramatic interviews trying to prove how tough he was inside. A lot of artists in the industry use their prison stories as a way to rebuild street credibility or amplify their image. They turn their time inside into full storytelling moments for the public. But Pooh Shiesty didn't really take that route. He kept most of his prison experience low-key and didn't turn it into a big public narrative. That decision, in a way, can signal a different kind of confidence. Less about proving something, more about moving forward.
There's no intent shown in that document. There's no words that were said. There's no pointing of the firearm at anyone. Essentially, what the document says and what the witnesses said on that day is that the defendant was being escorted out of the club. He reached for his pockets, looking for money in his pockets. A weapon was pulled and it was fired at the ground. And after it was fired at the ground, allegedly the ricochet or whatever happened was one of the either security guards or an employee of the club was struck in his ankle.
At the same time, this entire situation highlights a bigger issue in hip-hop culture. Whenever a young rapper rises quickly and gains major success, there are often voices that try to rewrite or tear down their image while they're vulnerable. Memphis rap politics especially have always been layered and competitive, with different neighborhoods, crews, and long-standing rivalries shaping how artists are perceived. When Pooh Shiesty broke through nationally, that level of success automatically placed him under a spotlight where not everyone was rooting for him. and that alone can fuel competing narratives around his name. The allegations against Pooh Shiesty follow a pattern that's been seen many times before. A successful artist gets locked up, then stories start leaking about them allegedly being punked or pressured inside prison. While they're behind bars and unable to respond in real time, their reputation takes hits on the outside. But here's the part that matters. When you actually dig deeper into many of these narratives, a lot of them don't hold up under real scrutiny. Let's be honest about how federal prison politics actually work. Federal prison is not the same as county jail, where constant small-time pressure over commissary might happen. In the federal system, most inmates are serving longer sentences and are already locked into their own structured situations and priorities. That changes the entire dynamic of day-to-day interactions. The idea that Pooh Shiesty was allegedly forced to freestyle for protection also doesn't fully make logical sense when you break it down. If someone was truly trying to extort a rapper in federal custody, the focus would more likely be on money transfers, commissary funds, or outside connections, not performances or entertainment-style demands. What seems more realistic, based on the available information, is the version the prison OG described. That Pooh Shiesty stayed to himself, avoided unnecessary attention, and focused heavily on his music and personal routine. For a young artist with a high-profile case, that's actually one of the safest and smartest ways to serve time in that environment. And when you look at the bigger picture, multiple voices with first-hand experience vouched for his conduct inside. While the opposing allegations came from individuals whose narratives appeared closely tied to resentment over his success and public rise. That tells you what the real story probably is when you zoom out and look at everything Pooh Shiesty has done since coming home. His actions speak louder than any prison rumor or online story. He earned an early release through time served and good behavior, which is a documented fact. The government originally pushed for a much longer sentence, around 10 years, but he ended up serving roughly 3 years instead. That doesn't happen unless an inmate follows rules, stays out of serious trouble, and completes what the system requires. And here's where the timeline takes another sharp turn. After getting released in October 2025, Pooh Shiesty barely had time to settle before things shifted again. He was placed in a residential reentry facility in Dallas as part of supervised release, which is basically a structured halfway house environment with strict rules, monitoring, and limited freedom of movement. Then, just a few months after that release, reports surfaced that he was rearrested. The exact details are still developing, but supervised release violations are serious in the federal system and can send someone back into custody extremely quickly, sometimes with minimal warning.
What happened here was the defendant was angry because the victim in this case, who was a security guard, told him to put away his gun. He then grew angry. He pointed the gun at him and shot him. The victim specifically states in the arrest warrant that he had to move out of the way. He was directly shooting at him. The only reason he got shot in the ankle was because he jumped out of the way at the last minute. This happened in front of a club full of people. There's video of the defendant with the gun in his hand.
And then in early 2026, things escalated again when the FBI reportedly conducted a raid at a family home in Memphis. Law enforcement arrived looking for evidence or individuals tied to an ongoing matter, and when federal agents show up like that, it immediately signals a serious investigation rather than a routine visit. Whether this raid is directly connected to the rearrest or part of a separate case is still unclear, but the timing and sequence of events have definitely raised questions. The pattern is hard for people to ignore, even as details remain limited and developing. Here's the bigger picture that ties it all together. Pooh Shiesty is a 25-year-old artist who came out of one of the toughest cities in the country, reached platinum success, and gained national attention at a very young age before all of this unfolded again. Most people his age are still figuring out what direction their life is going in, but the system clearly isn't done with Pooh Shiesty yet. Whether that's because he's still tied to old environments or because fame naturally puts a bigger spotlight on you from law enforcement, nobody can say for certain. It's probably a mix of both factors playing into the situation. Federal supervised release is extremely strict and not something to take lightly. There are limits on where you can go, who you can be around, what you can post online, and even who you can associate with in everyday life. For a 25-year-old rapper coming out of Memphis with an entire entertainment world trying to pull him in different directions, those restrictions create a very difficult balance. One wrong decision under that level of supervision can send everything spiraling back into custody very quickly. Federal prison and supervision systems are designed in a way that keeps pressure on individuals long after release, making reintegration into normal life a constant challenge. At the same time, the fact that Pooh Shiesty came out still creative, still connected to his audience, and still actively working on music shows he managed his time inside in a focused way. Whatever happens outside of prison becomes a completely different test, and that part of the story is still unfolding with no clear final outcome yet. The prison OG who spoke in his defense put it bluntly: in federal prison, the real ones adapt and survive, while the ones who can't usually don't make it through inted. From that perspective, Pooh Shiesty completing his time without losing his direction or career momentum says something about how he carried himself inside of sight. But at the end of the day, prison and the streets operate on completely different rules, and success in one doesn't always guarantee success in the other. At the end of the day, these kinds of prison allegations show up around almost every rapper who ends up behind bars. It's almost become part of the pattern in the industry. What really separates the real from the fake is what happens after release and how someone chooses to move once they're back in the world. Pooh Shiesty responded by focusing on his music, reconnecting with his fans, and carrying himself like someone who learned from the experience instead of someone who was destroyed by it. But the truth is, the chapter after prison is often the hardest one to write. It's where pressure from the streets, the industry, and the legal system all collide at the same time. And that's exactly where Pooh Shiesty found himself once he stepped back outside. So when people ask whether the stories about him being extorted or pressured in prison are real, the facts tell a different kind of story. He ate well because he had access to money. He survived because he stayed smart and avoided unnecessary problems. He had a respected OG step in and vouch for his behavior with nothing to gain from doing so. And he earned his early release through good conduct, not chaos. Meanwhile, a lot of the allegations came from voices that had personal motivations or nothing concrete to back up their claims. That's the part people often overlook in situations like this. Not everything that spreads online is rooted in verified experience, but survival inside federal prison and survival outside in the real world are two completely different games. And right now, Pooh Shiesty is still navigating that second battle in real time to top. The Memphis rap scene clearly still has a place for him, and his story, from platinum success to prison time to re-entry pressure, feels like a real-life documentary unfolding in front of everyone. Whether the next chapter ends in redemption or setback is still unknown, but all eyes are definitely on it. If this breakdown gave you a new perspective, make sure to like, subscribe, share, and drop a comment letting me know what you think about these allegations and whether you believe the stories or the people vouching for him. More real stories like this are on the way, so stay tuned and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next drop.